In the heart of a distant kingdom, where the winds carried the sounds of caravans and the markets shimmered with gold and spices, a man was born whose name has been lost to time, but whose wisdom has endured through centuries. He was not just an ordinary merchant, but a relentless seeker of prosperity, someone who understood that true wealth was not measured by the weight of coins, but by how they flowed like living blood within society. It is said that as a young man, he wandered through the marketplaces, observing merchants shouting their prices, and realized that each voice was not merely selling goods, but dreams, hopes, and survival. While many hoarded what little they had out of fear of loss, he discovered that the secret lay in learning to multiply the little they possessed, and that fear was the greatest prison of prosperity. It was then that he received a teaching from a wise traveler. Those who learn to control their spending master the first pillar of abundance. Those who learn to invest create roots that bear eternal fruit. This phrase never left his mind and became the principle that guided his choices, for he understood that prosperity was not a matter of chance, but the result of discipline, faith, and vision. He began recording his observations of the markets on scrolls, noting the successes and failures of the merchants, creating what may have been the first secret manual of prosperity in his time. Over time, his wealth grew, but more than gold, his influence expanded, as everyone wanted to learn from him how to turn difficulties into opportunities. He taught that prosperity was not just about accumulating wealth, but about multiplying it in a way that blessed others, for true abundance is like a fountain that flows without ceasing. Here is a practical lesson he left behind. Never spend all you earn. Always set aside a portion to invest and another to bless others, for the flow of wealth requires both inflow and outflow to stay alive. In the quiet nights of his palace, he meditated before the flames, believing that prosperity was a divine gift granted to those who learned to use it wisely. He understood that wealth was not just about the present, but about building a legacy that would span generations, and that every choice made today would shape the destiny of his descendants. It is said that travelers passing through his lands were welcomed with feasts, and each meal was a disguised lesson, for as he served bread and wine, he also served teachings of abundance. Once he told his disciples, "The mind is like fertile soil. If you plant seeds of fear, you reap scarcity, but if you plant seeds of faith and discipline, you harvest infinite prosperity." This metaphor has echoed through the centuries and remains true today, for we all carry within us this same field, ready to receive the right seeds. And now I ask you, what seeds are you planting in your life? Are they seeds of fear or of abundance? Share your thoughts in the comments because your answer might awaken others. He also taught that prosperity requires patience, for gold does not accumulate in a single day, but through the consistency of wise choices made daily. Thus, he always advised, organize your finances, track what comes in and what goes out. For those who don't know their numbers are condemned to live in the darkness of scarcity. This advice has transcended time and remains as true today as it was then, because prosperity will always be tied to clarity, and clarity brings power. In his journey, he faced crises, invasions, and even droughts, but he never let scarcity be the end, for he understood that within every crisis lay the seed of a new opportunity. He saw scarcity as an invitation to creativity and challenges as chances to grow, so he never retreated. He reinvented himself. He said, "The poor man is not the one who loses gold, but the one who loses hope," for he knew the mind was the true treasure that sustained all wealth. And if you've made it this far, reflect with me. What would you do if you lost everything today? Would you have the mental strength to start over? Share in the comments because your answer might inspire someone. This ancestor believed that prosperity was also about gratitude, for only those who recognize what they already have make room to receive more. So, every morning, he gave thanks for life, for the land, for trade, and even for challenges, understanding that everything was part of the cycle of abundance. He also said that financial prosperity without spirituality is empty, for it amasses goods but does not fill the heart. His true wealth lay in the balance of faith, work, and generosity, and perhaps that's why his name outlasted that of warrior kings. It is said that before he died, he left a message carved in stone. Prosperity does not end with me. It continues in everyone who understands these truths and puts them into practice. And that's why today, in telling his story, we're not just speaking of a man from the past, but of eternal principles that remain alive and can transform your life right now. The final lesson of this first chapter is clear. Prosper not just to accumulate, but to overflow, for only then will your wealth become eternal. And I ask you, what legacy of prosperity do you wish to leave for those who come after you? Write it in the comments because your vision could inspire an entire generation. Tradition tells that after the death of the great ancestor of abundance, one of his descendants discovered the secret scrolls where the lessons of prosperity were recorded and decided not only to follow them, but to expand upon them in his own journey. This man grew up in a time of instability, where empires rose and fell like waves in the sea. But he understood that while many sought only power, he would seek wisdom, for he knew wisdom was the key to true wealth. He observed the trade along maritime routes, watching ships depart laden with spices, silk, and gold, and realized that those who mastered knowledge also mastered the flow of abundance. With only a small chest of coins inherited from his father, he began to trade, but he never wagered everything on a single venture, for he said diversification was the shield against the storms of scarcity. This teaching became one of his hallmarks. Never place all your wealth in one direction, for the winds change, and prosperity lies in planting seeds across different fields. He said divine wealth required both vision and strategy, and that a person who prays without acting gets lost, just as one who acts without faith wears themselves out. Thus, his nights were split between prayer and study, believing that a mind connected to the divine could see opportunities where others saw only despair. It is said that once, after losing much of his fortune in a dishonest deal, he did not give in to lamentation but declared before all, "Gold can be stolen, but the wisdom that generates it cannot be taken from me." This declaration spread like wildfire and was repeated by merchants and sages, for all understood that the greatest wealth lies in the mindset, not in the coffers. Here's a practical tip he left behind. Invest in knowledge before investing in business, for a trained mind multiplies any seed, while an empty mind squanders even the greatest treasures. He also valued time, saying that those who waste hours waste their own lives, and that organizing one's routine was one of the greatest secrets of prosperity. Thus, he advised his disciples to always dedicate part of the day to learning, part to work, part to rest, and part to gratitude. For balance is the true foundation of abundance. And I ask you now, how are you using your time? Do you waste it on distractions, or do you invest it in building something that will bear fruit? Share in the comments, for your answer might spark reflection in someone who needs it. This prosperous descendant also understood the power of generosity, affirming that giving was not losing but creating space to receive even more. He said every coin given to someone in need was like a seed sown in fertile soil, returning multiplied in unexpected ways. And he didn't speak only of financial giving, but also of donating time, words, advice, and opportunities, for he believed prosperity was a flow, not a hoard. This mindset made his name remembered not just as a rich man, but as a blessed one, someone who prospered without becoming a slave to his own wealth. It is said that many came from distant lands to hear him speak, and his words were so powerful that they not only taught about finances, but also healed the souls of those who had lost hope. He spoke simply, but his words were like fire, for they awakened dormant faith in every heart. And now I ask you, what do you feel when you hear about prosperity? Joy, hope, or perhaps fear of never achieving it? Share in the comments, for every feeling has a story behind it and can inspire others. One of his greatest lessons was discipline. He believed prosperity is built through small daily acts, saving one coin, investing another, giving thanks for a third. He said discipline is the bridge between desire and achievement, and without it, any dream scatters like dust in the wind. And perhaps this is the hardest part for many even today, maintaining consistency in the principles of prosperity. even when results seem slow to come. But he always reminded, a farmer doesn't harvest the same day they plant, and likewise those who sow prosperity must wait for the right time to reap the rewards. This patience, coupled with action, made him one of the most respected men of his generation, for he wasn't swayed by easy shortcuts, but built his wealth on solid foundations. Here's another practical piece of advice you can apply today. Never confuse speed with direction. It's better to walk slowly on the right path than to run quickly toward emptiness. He also believed in the power of words, teaching that what we repeat daily shapes our reality. Thus, he encouraged his disciples to declare phrases of abundance every morning, believing that a mind programmed for prosperity naturally attracts opportunities. And I ask you now, what words have you been repeating about your financial life? Are they words of scarcity or abundance? Write in the comments and see how even your declarations can influence others to change. At the end of his life, he recorded that the true path to divine wealth was not the frantic pursuit of gold, but the pursuit of balance between faith, discipline, wisdom, and generosity. And he said that those who follow this path will not only prosper, but become a channel of prosperity for many others. So today, as we hear his story, we are reminded that wealth doesn't begin in the pocket but in the heart, and when we align our values with the divine, gold becomes merely a consequence. And so we close the second chapter of this trilogy with the clear lesson that the path to divine wealth is a road requiring consistency, but rewarding with abundance those who remain steadfast. I leave you with one final reflection. Which of these pillars do you need to strengthen most today? Faith, discipline, wisdom, or generosity? Write in the comments, for your choice could be the next step in your journey. Legend has it that many generations after the great ancestors of prosperity, a descendant emerged who wasn't content merely to inherit wealth and teachings. He sought to understand how to make prosperity eternal. He grew up surrounded by palaces and libraries, immersed in gilded manuscripts and stories that spanned centuries, yet he always asked himself, how can I ensure this abundance never fades with time? From an early age, he understood that inheritance isn't just gold and land, but mindset, and that the greatest treasure one can leave is the wisdom that opens infinite doors. Thus, he turned his life into a laboratory of prosperity, applying every principle he learned, testing each teaching, and recording on stone and papyrus the lessons that would mark future generations. He observed that many who inherited fortunes lost everything within a few years, and he said their mistake was trying to hoard abundance instead of keeping it in motion. For this reason, he repeated like a mantra, prosperity must not be stored like stagnant water, but shared like a flowing river, for only then does it remain alive. Here's a practical piece of advice he left. Never fear investing in new ideas, for gold only grows when it finds movement, and stagnation is the greatest enemy of wealth. It is said that he organized gatherings in grand marble halls, bringing together young people, merchants, and even rulers to teach about prosperity. His words were so powerful that many wept, realizing their lives could change in that very moment. He spoke with conviction but also simplicity, believing that prosperity shouldn't be a hidden mystery, but a path accessible to all who sought it with faith and discipline. Once, before thousands, he declared, "It's not the amount of gold in your coffers that defines your wealth, but the amount of hope and vision in your mind." These words crossed borders and echoed in distant lands, transforming even those who never met him but felt the impact of his message. He also taught that true prosperity rests on three pillars: gratitude, stewardship, and multiplication. Without these, any fortune fades with time. And now I ask you, of these three pillars, which do you practice most intensely, and which do you need to strengthen? Share in the comments, for your reflection might light the way for someone else's journey. This ancestor also believed that each generation has the responsibility to elevate the level of abundance, and that living off inherited wealth without adding to it is a waste of the opportunity to honor one's forebears. Thus, he encouraged his disciples to create, innovate, and build, for he said the eternity of prosperity lies in continuous progress. He affirmed that those who don't dream bigger condemn their descendants to stagnation, And that dreaming big isn't pride, but gratitude to the divine for giving us the ability to multiply. Here's another practical tip that can transform your life. Never limit your plans to the size of what you have today, for faith is the bridge that connects the little you have to the much you can achieve. It is said that in his final years, he walked through the palace gardens and told the young, "You are the guardians of abundance, and the gold you receive only has value if it continues to flow to the next generations." He understood that prosperity is a responsibility, and that every financial, spiritual, and emotional decision impacts not only your own life, but also the lives of those to come. Thus, he taught the importance of writing down plans, calculating risks, and making conscious decisions. For he said clarity is the lamp that guides the path to abundance. And I ask you, do you have clarity in your financial and spiritual plans, or are you still living by improvisation? Share in the comments, for your honesty might awaken someone who needs to organize their life. This descendant also emphasized the power of community, stating that no one prospers alone and that even kings depend on advisors and allies. He said shared wealth unites families, strengthens cities, and creates a legacy that spans centuries. Here's another practical piece of advice. Surround yourself with people who also seek prosperity, for walking with those who sow scarcity allows them to steal your seeds of abundance. At the end of his life, he left engraved in stone one of the most remembered phrases to this day. Prosperity is eternal. For those who understand, they are not its owners but channels through which it flows. These words became the cornerstone of his lineage and are still repeated as a chant by those who believe in divine abundance. And I leave you with one final reflection. Do you wish to be merely a consumer of prosperity, or do you want to be a channel through which it continues to flow? Share in the comments, for your choice could shape your story. Thus concludes the trilogy of prosperity, with the certainty that divine principles transcend time, and that abundance doesn't belong to the past or the future, but is available right now to those who choose to believe, act, and overflow.